Thank you. It's great to be here. Is this remote working so I can click on the slides? There we go. So let me go back. So just briefly, some could say I'm a crafty veteran of the data virtualization space. I was originally introduced to GIM and Composite in early 2001 when Pfizer was going through a massive transformation, and that transformation had to do with creating a customer supply chain. And that supply chain was all about how you start integrating sales, marketing, and customer service together to create what I would call a 360 view of the customer. We were in the midst of changing our selling model, and one of the big things that we had to go through was how do we start integrating business processes across our sales, marketing, customer service, and manufacturing capabilities. For I'd say 3 or 4 months, we were really looking at, well, do we use traditional data warehousing to do that? And the challenge that we had at Pfizer really was the time to market for some of this stuff, which I think is the power of using data virtualization. So typical, from what we saw at Pfizer, typical data warehousing project to create what I'd say a customer data hub was anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Which if you look at any business case nowadays, 6 to 12 months is an eternity. So that's when we started looking at really alternatives to how we could actually bring together this customer information more quickly and rapidly and start integrating across that customer supply chain. So that's when we got introduced to the concept of data virtualization way back, almost 10 years ago. And I personally have been a big fan of it ever since, really because of the ability to deliver quickly, the ability to integrate that information in many different ways, whether it's a web service, ODBC, JDBC, or REST interface. But more importantly, the value it brings really to the business in terms of process integration, which I'll talk about later. So when I left Pfizer and went to take on my role at Diageo, very similar problem, but a very different perspective on that problem. So a lot of what Diageo's business is all about is really, marketing, branding, and selling great products. And in order to do that, you have to have great insights into marketing demand as well as what your customers are asking for. And the customer models are very different globally, where in the United States, it's a third-party distributor model. In Europe, you sell directly to sometimes consumers or customers or pubs. And in Africa and in Asia, it's usually through a joint venture product type of arrangement. So there are many different kinds of data environments that you're operating in. So really trying to bring all that data into a data warehouse didn't make a lot of sense for us because, again, many different data sources, many different regional processes in which that information moves through. What is the quickest way in which you can create what I would say a customer master data model that allowed you to integrate sales, marketing, plan, manufacturing information in a very consolidated way. So again, data virtualization, in my humble perspective, was a great architecture model to move forward with pretty quickly. Last but certainly not least, at Pearson, we are in the midst of what we're calling creating the customer value chain. And Pearson is really a combination of many different companies that I'm going to walk through right now. So we own a lot of different businesses, and you probably know a lot of our brands, or your kids interact with our products all the time. So Pearson is really a learning company. 3 major brands are Penguin, so Penguin Books, Penguin Publishing, DK, Rough Guides. You may know the Financial Times, certainly for those folks that work in financial services and merger markets. But also a very large part of our business is education and learning. We own anything from software and services that provides technology capabilities to students, whether that's K through 12 or universities. We also own schools. So if you go to China, you'll have a large set of Pearson schools that we own and operate through our English, our ELT business, or our Global Academies business. Or you may go to the UK where we own Edexcel, which is an assessments and testing company. So a lot of different companies, a lot of different information that is part of the domain of Pearson. As I mentioned before, really three major brands that you may know about, but it's also a lot of different companies all together working towards one real goal, which is really to provide better learning capabilities globally for individuals. So to talk about, and I walk through these slides real quickly. So I love this slide because it really speaks to, so this is an artist and painter in India. And the interesting thing about this guy is that he mixes and mashes all different colors together to create a canvas, and he does it in real time. So you can go up to him and ask him, can I get a picture of a tree using these kind of different colors? And he's able to assemble them rapidly in real time without even thinking about it. So he doesn't go to a supply store to pick out paints. He makes his own ingredients and he creates it from scratch, right? Why is this so relevant for data? It's really relevant because what we're being asked in our environment today is to start assembling real-time information in a rapid fashion and deliver those capabilities quickly in 3 months or less. And the traditional ways in which we would do data warehousing, data distribution don't really apply to a real-time model. For Pearson in particular, where our business is changing on a weekly basis, so having readily available information on demand in any kind of format is an imperative for us. So one of the big things that drives our vision around data virtualization really is a couple key things. The first is just reducing complexity in our environment. So with so many different businesses and data environments that are critical, one would ask, well, why don't you just try to standardize on one common, database or data technology? But in today's world, that's really hard to do. And the return on investment usually for a business case like that is, I would say, 3 to 5 years. So I'm sure many of you have been down the path of developing a business case and trying to get stuff out the door. What we're seeing, sometimes the best approach is really to abstract out a lot of your data sources and start creating what we call data services. And those really drive a couple key things. Number one, it gives you the ability to reduce complexity in your environment. Number two, gives ways for people to start collaborating on information that they would never think or dream possible. I think the third thing, most importantly for us, is that it drives a common set of nomenclature around information architecture. So you can easily create a technology agnostic data model around customer or product using data virtualization techniques and using composite software to start integrating information across your environment in a much more rapid fashion. Last and certainly not least, it really develops what I would say is some core architecture capabilities of the company that actually allows your architects and engineers to have control on how they define customer and product information versus Oracle, SAP, Salesforce defining it for you, which I think is very powerful. So let me talk a little bit about the customer value chain and why we are so passionate about driving this level of transformation across our company. So in our environment today, we have a great set of sales, marketing, and call center capabilities. One of the opportunities for us is to now start leveraging those organizations in a new way that allows each and every one of those organizations to have real-time information into customers and products. And one of the ways in which we're looking at that is that how do I provide a 360-degree view of customer and product information to my sales rep who's out detailing a product to a teacher or a professor? How do I provide our marketing team with real-time insights into what customers are saying about our products to change their marketing plans? And then how do I provide the call center with a view into product information that allows them to know that they are really in touch with what the customer needs? So that may sound simple to do. In practice, as a lot of you know, that customer or product information and master data sits across many different systems and applications in your environment. So for us, it was a light bulb that went off, is that rather than trying to rip and replace all of these systems, why don't we create a capability that aligns to a new set of business processes that allows us to take our existing systems, create a customer and product model that maps back to a common business process that we actually worked on with the sales, marketing, and call center folks, that mapped out how we consistently provide sampling, tracking, detailing, and call center capabilities, all using a backbone of a common process, and then layer data virtualization underneath of that business process to provide master data and real-time information on customers and products. And to do that, oh, by the way, in 3 months or less. So that was really the challenge that was put down by our committee of CEOs when we went forward to do this. And traditionally, you could think about doing this, well, why don't I create a data warehouse and start pulling all this information together? But quite honestly, that may take a lot of time. Quite frankly, I think a better approach in our case was, let's create those canonical models around product and information separately, populate those into a data virtualization tool, and then start integrating the information together. And then over time, as our business changes and those back-end systems change, you can easily retire those systems without disrupting any of the front-end business processes. So that was really our approach. And key to that approach was really creating, I'd say, the business process bridge. Because a big thing around doing these types of projects is what is the business value? And the business value was really 3 things for us. First was enabling the sales, marketing, and call center team to collaborate and view customer information in ways that they had never done before. 2 was accelerate the process efficiency gains that we could get in our sales, marketing, and call center groups. And then 3rd, oh, by the way, a roadmap for starting to retire some of our legacy systems that we no longer saw strategic. So if you look at our integrated sales model, you have some really basic capabilities. This is not rocket science or nothing new to any of you folks, but just to give you some view into how we actually view the customer lifecycle, there's a couple key components to this. There's really what we call commercial planning. There are the CRM activities. There are analytics activities, and then there's marketing planning. And that's kind of the cycle or the end-to-end business process that our sales and marketing folks are going to be using in the future. In order to integrate common product and customer information in this model, you need almost a centralized data hub that allows you to deliver information that is one source of the truth, but also allows you to integrate that information in any kind of interface into any of their front-end systems. So if they are using a Salesforce.com tool, I can give them an ODBC or JDBC or REST or web service or SOAP interface that they can consume that provides the same set of data that I would be providing to our back-end Oracle ERP team using a composite Oracle adapter. The key is that we're able to start integrating these teams in rapid fashion using a data virtualization technique, which I think is number one, much quicker time to market, and number 2, much more cost effective than you would traditionally try to do some of these IT projects, and 3, gives us much more agility in actually changing our customer models moving forward. So this slide here kind of illustrates what we are calling the customer value chain in Pearson. It all starts really with our customer support channels. And so when you sell products and services, it is very crucial that you have the common set of truths around your customer lifecycle. And that means, what did my customer order? What service calls did that customer place on a Pearson product? What are our reps detailing, and what products are we actually engaging in conversations with? It's important that all those pieces of information are be able to be served up to your sales, your marketing, and your call center folks in a very consistent fashion, so they're all working off of the same script. one thing that one of the feedback points from my prior lives was that customers don't like to get 2 to 3 different answers from the same company. And so what this enables you to do is to allow your customers to get a common set of answers, the same answers, across disparate parts of your business, which I think is wonderful. So what is the kind of the architecture approach for doing something, or what I would call the blueprint that first starts with connecting business processes, second, then allows you to create what I'd say a technology independent information architecture, and then third, allows you to create what I would say common data stores that are targets for virtualization. So I really break it up into 3 layers. It's the application stack that actually consumes the information. So those are your core business process applications. You have a composite software tier in the middle that actually is your data federation and your data virtualization hub. And then third, you really have what I would say master data sources that you target for virtualization. So they really drive the master data elements for your customer data model that could be spread across many different repositories. So if I was to break this down into a couple key components, the first, what you get is when you build applications moving forward, you can build what I would call a composite or mashup set of applications. They allow you to integrate different pieces of information across your enterprise and allows you to create what I would say business process centric applications. So for example, using this type of architectural approach, you can really create an application that gives you a 360 view of customer. That information may sit across 5 different systems. In our case, customer information really sits across 7 different areas. It sits across our 3 different ERP backends, our 2 different CRM systems, and our 2 different call center applications that we run. But now we can build an application that allows a call center rep, a sales rep, or a marketing rep to get access to all of that information in a very integrated way. That is powered by what we call common business services. Which is get customer detail, get customer activity, get product information, get order delivery time. Those are basically business components. They are not technical services at all that get served up to those applications. Those are enabled through data virtualization techniques that we use composite software for. What composite software allows us to do is that get customer detail information sits across those 7 different systems I talked about. That could be the last 5 orders that a customer actually processed with us, the 3 or 4 reps that actually called on that customer the last 5 times that we saw him, the status on their order, the service calls that they've actually placed. Having all that information, the power of your marketing, your sales, and your call center reps really gives the business the power to be a very customer-centric business, which at the end of the day, we view as one of the key advantages for how we're going to move forward. This is one of my favorite slides because we always talk about getting on the bus. And I think most importantly, if you look at our environment, we're really using composite software as an abstraction layer. To really mask the complexities of where customer information sits in our environment today and creating a reusable set of business services and components that can be leveraged across many different applications over time. Number 2, it protects you from any kind of vendor lock-in that you may have. I know Oracle or SAP or Red Hat may not want to hear that from me, but I think one of the powers that it gives all of you in this room the ability to control your own destiny around information. It gives you the ability to define how your business defines a customer or product or identity, for instance. So I think that is very crucial, particularly in our environment when we're being asked to implement technology changes in a very rapid fashion. So what are some of the key takeaways? Data virtualization is not a technology enabler, it's a business enabler. And I think the more that we can talk about how it is really a transformational capability to to enable the business to move much more quickly and efficiently, in particular around linking customer and product information together in new and different ways, is a very powerful message. The second is really a driver for implementing master data and analytics in your environment, particularly in our case where you need to create a common view of customer across all those different systems. Having a architecture like composite to enable that is quite powerful. Third is you can get this stuff up and running in less than a week. And if you don't believe me, feel free to contact me or come into our environment or talk to Mukul, who's here. But we were able to get a lot of this stuff up and running in less than a week and able to deliver a lot of these capabilities in 3 months or less. Finally, most important to me is really taking a business-driven approach to solving the customer value chain. And I think I've talked about it many times before, but it really starts with transformational business process, where information needs to be consistent across many different channels, i.e. sales, marketing, and your call center environment. So with that, I'll stop talking, as my wife likes to say, and I'll open it up to any questions or comments that folks may have.
Start with you, Andy, since you're nice and close.
Thanks. Okay, so it sounded as though you have a canonical model in your data virtualization layers. Was that defined by an enterprise group and then you placed it in there?
It was basically defined by, so master data, in my view, is defined by the business. So IT does not own customer or product information. We're really the stewards of that. So our customer or product models are always driven off of how the business defines a customer or product. What we basically do is to take that definition and then map it to, well, what master data attributes for customer sit in our environment that would map back to this definition, right? So who generates the uniqueness for a customer? That starts with our CRM system. Who defines the customer's address, shipping, billing information, and last 5 products that are sold? That's driven off of our Oracle system. Who defines the last 5 calls that a customer actually made or complaints? Those are driven by our call center system. So the business drives the definition of customer. IT's job, or in our case, our job, is to map back that business definition to where those pieces of information sit into our environment, and then implementing those 2 pillars together in composite software.
Right, so your customers define the attributes and entities, at least in business?
Yes.
And then your group designs the
Correct.
logical or physical model within.
Yes.
This is Ganesh from Merck. So the question is about delivering something in a week. So is it operational in a week, or is it just a proof of concept delivered in a week?
It's operational in a week.
So how do you, so where are the requirements, and how does the operational team take over all these information, all the requirements, and any other documentation?
You broke up. So how do we operationalize it in a week?
Right. Yeah.
So part of the operationalizing of the architecture and infrastructure goes back to how you all design your IT organizations, right? So one of the things that we do in our environments, and what we've tried to do in our teams when I was at Pfizer or Diageo or even at Pearson, is take a very product-centric focus to IT. So we have a product management team that really defines those customer models and attributes, right? They work very closely with our software engineering in a very agile methodology to deliver a sprint 1 in less than a week. A sprint 1 is standing up technical infrastructure, getting the canonical model to work, and then actually accessing that canonical model through a set of services, right? What's key to that model is having the infrastructure folks, the architecture folks, the engineering, and your delivery folks all part of that sprint team. And oh, by the way, the owner of the product actually comes from the business. So it's not only the software, but you also have to change your methodology and how you're going to deliver capabilities. Because a traditional waterfall method that some of you may practice doesn't necessarily lend itself quite nicely to delivering a capability in less than a week. We at Pearson have really adopted an agile approach to doing that, which is why we're able to get measured against delivering capabilities in 3 months or less. Quite frankly, my personal opinion is that if IT is not driving value in 3 months or less on a project, then why are we doing it?
How have you done the analytics side of things? When I watched your presentation, there are a lot of get this, get that, which screams operational, supply chain, all that stuff. But then you want to report on it later on. You want to have analysis on it later on. What does the whole sort of analytics side of it look after you've got those canonicals? Can you kind of speak to that a little
sure.
bit?
So in Diageo, for example, we were a very big MicroStrategy customer, right? So one of the things that MicroStrategy does very well is the ability to serve up analytics. What it doesn't do very well is to be able to create the back-end infrastructure that enables you to pull all that information together. And oh, by the way, you have to cache that information on your analytics reporting and make sure that it works very quickly and rapidly. So if I was to take for instance, a report on product sales within Pearson and use your traditional BI capabilities around that, the latency and the way in which you process that report may be very slow. What Composite enables you to do is to take the master data canonical models, apply those to analytics, and pull that information together that then MicroStrategy or business objects or ClickView can use. Or in our case, we're looking at using it for stuff like Tableau, for instance, that supports analytics and reporting in our Hadoop environment. We're also looking at the use cases for user management in our gaming environment. So it is basically an extension or a back-end engine that allows you to do analytics and reporting in a much more simplistic fashion than using the traditional back-end infrastructures. The second big thing is that it scales very well. And the secret sauce is really the caching engine and algorithms that sit within the software that they've developed over the last 10 years. So if you I talked to a bunch of customers a long time ago when I was at Pfizer that were using a lot of the composite stuff for trade reporting, where you have to pull together risk and market basket and real-time information together, and that stuff needs to get cached. So. Yeah, it was more of an extension. So when you, my approach anyway, I don't know if it's the right or wrong one, but when you develop master data, you also have to have a notion about what kind of operational reporting people want to do on that customer. So like for instance, I pull up a customer report, what are the monthly, quarterly sales of this customer? So it's a natural extension of the software to provide the canonical models for reports or the logical models for a report that pulls all the information together. Which for us becomes very reusable because in our environment we have different kind of reporting tools that we leverage.
Yeah, seems like you have done 3 times in introducing this technology to different companies. Can you talk a little about the technique you use to sell the value of this technology to business so that they buy into the story they are willing to invest?
I never mention the technology when I sell it, so that's the first thing. I think the big thing that I use when in the last 3 companies is really around transformational opportunities within the business, right? So in the case of Pfizer, we were moving from a product-based company to a customer-based company. So when you're a product-based company, your organizational models are very vertical, right? And in product-based companies, those products do everything from sales, marketing to call center. So, and when you're growing at 50 to 60% a clip, those models work very well because I can just cookie cutter them. When you make the switch, when your operational margins start decreasing and you need to start building what I would say shared business capabilities, you then need to look at that product model in a very different way. You need to take almost a customer view on how do I now sell a bundle of products together consistently to a customer. So in each one of the cases I highlighted, each one of those businesses was going through that exact kind of change. And the one that Jim didn't put up when I was at Merrill Lynch before I went to Pfizer we were looking at very similar technology and how we were going to do our retail brokerage system, because we needed to create we were calling it Project 360 at the time, a 360 view of the customer across our institutional products, our equity, and our finance products, and what was the risk in real time on a portfolio basket that we were running. So when companies are starting to make that switch, it's all, in my mind, really an enterprise architecture discussion. So then, how do I start integrating a consistent sales and marketing model? And if you're going to do that, then customer and product information needs to be consistent. And that's always been the selling point. I've never once have gone into our CEO or CIO and said, we need to buy composite software. It's always been, we need to deliver business change in this amount of time. We need to drive value creation in 3 to 6 months time frame, and you have this amount of money to do it. And here's the return on investment. I think the one unique thing about the 3 different areas that I worked, the business always wanted return on investment in 6 to 12 months, which if you look at financial calculations on enterprise software, your traditional data warehousing, the return on investment is usually 3 years out, which for me was a non-starter for getting any of this stuff approved, particularly with our CFOs. So the sales pitch was never composite software. I think they're an enabler for this, and then after we got the project started, people would ask, well, what's the underlying architecture that you used? And we published slides like this, but I think data virtualization is a technique, but the real driver is how do I start linking product and customer information together differently?
Hi, this is Nadeem from Sanofi. Can you talk about the use cases in Pfizer? And the other question is, what are some of the challenges you face since you've had such a vast experience with this product?
Great question. So a couple of the use cases that we used at Pfizer were a couple. Number one, we really used it for our research and development workbench that if any of you get a chance to talk to Michael, who's a fellow researcher at R&D, he can go into a lot more nauseating detail on how we're using it. But essentially, we were using it to link critical compound and clinical trial information across discovery, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So the great thing about the Pfizer use case when I was there was that we used to do R&D based on a very chemical-based model, right? So if any of you were in science class back in high school, there was this great giant chart that you saw, which was a list of elements, right? So when you would create chemical-based compounds, it's basically mixing those elements together to get a therapeutic outcome. So back in 2001, 2002, there was a gigantic transformation that was starting happening in the R&D space, where we were moving to much more of a biologic-based approach for discovery, and phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials was being done by computational models. So when that shift happened, we really needed to take a different look at how we started integrating information together. So how do you make a real-time decision on a candidate drug in phase 1? And oh, by the way, I need to pull all these different pieces of elements together to make that decision, right? So what we were using it for at the time is really integrating clinical trial information together, compound information together, and early discovery information together to enable better decision making at each one of those stage gates along the clinical development process. Our research group was using it to link together different pieces of information to make decisions on candidate compounds, which is what Michael's use case is all about. So we used it really in 2 phases. The third one is in particular we, in any pharmaceutical company, the doctor that the sales rep calls on could be the same physician that's conducting a trial for you, right? So it's probably a good idea if I'm a sales rep to know that Dr. Brodbeck is also the person that's running one of our major studies for us. And oh, by the way, we have some new research information that may be useful for him. So having also that kind of information is very critical. So that's how we were, using it at Pfizer. We were also using it really to drive a way in which we could link our sales and marketing teams together, because they were making the switch from being a very product-centric company. So a doctor at the time could get called on by 5 different Pfizer sales reps that were selling different kinds of products. They were making the shift to then have one sales rep that focused on a therapeutic area. So for us, it was also the transformation of a much more customer-centric view to how we sampled, detailed, and sold to physicians.
Sumenda Basu from Citigroup. I got a question. Before your first implementation in Pfizer, have you looked at any other competing technologies and vendors?
Yeah.
And what kind of studies you have gathered that time?
So, all right, so this is going back a ways, but so there used to be a product called BA Liquid Data that came out in 2000 that we looked at quite hard before I even got to Pfizer. There was another product called MetaMatrix, who remembers that one, that was also what I would say a first generation EII product. There was another company, a bunch of startup companies. I forget the names of them. Sorry, those are the 2 that I remember. But there was, back in I'd say the late 90s, early 2000s, there was this realization around there's got to be a better way to assemble data. And I think the tipping point really became the cost of managing data warehousing and ETL infrastructure just becomes astronomical. And it's this tail that you can't get rid of that stays with you forever. So for us, when I was at Merrill and then when I went to Pfizer, it was the realization that the economic models around how you actually access data needed to change. So that's when, me personally, we started exploring data virtualization capabilities, because quite frankly, the economics around how people managed data infrastructure, how they put it together, and how more importantly, how your developers actually accessed it, just became very hard to manage. So that's when we started looking, in the late 90s, early 2000s around this.
One final question.
Hi, Martin. My name is Jacinto Fernandez. I'm from Bank of America. My question is basically, you implemented data virtualization in different organizations. Finally, all the virtual tables, the query goes to the main databases. What kind of challenges or performance issue you had, and how did you tackle it?
So,
Thank you.
So, one of the big things that always comes up when you talk about data virtualizations is the ability to do a single query across multiple systems, right? So that's always the first performance challenge that comes up in the enterprise IT market, right? So how do you do a federated customer query and get great response? So the answer to that is really 2 things. The first is, number 1, the software from Composite. These guys have been doing it for 10 years. So they've mastered the art of doing federated queries, which is great. So a lot of the bottlenecks you'll actually run into when you do a federated query are actually with the source systems, because their data models are so complex, or the way in which they structure information is so bad that to pull that data together it takes a lot. The second thing is that the caching capabilities of Composite is very good. So after you run the report the first time, you can instantly cache that in one of the servers to uptick performance. The third thing is always around security, right? So how do I maintain the integrity of the information? The one great thing about the security model that they've actually developed is that you can actually maintain the existing security models in your source systems. So Composite creates a nice fidelity between the security, or what I would call the CRUD rights, which is create, write, update, or delete. It maintains the integrity of the source system that's pulling from. So from my perspective, those were always the 3 biggest challenges that we saw from our IT infrastructure guys, that I think the Composite software stack has a really good, compelling story around how you can actually do that.
So with that, thank you very much.
Thank
well
you.
done, and really appreciate it.
Thank you.